Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this Open University Business School webinar on diversity and inclusion in the workplace with a focus on disability. It's lovely to see so many of you join us as we discuss this important topic. My name is Martha Tengenesha, External Engagement Coordinator in the Faculty of Business and Law. I'm joined today by Tillmann Henssler from Pfizer, who will share his insight on this subject. The aim of this webinar is to examine how you and your organization can do the following: to contribute towards raising awareness for different types of disabilities and the potential challenges in the workplace, help reduce unconscious bias towards people with disabilities, and tips on creating an inclusive environment in your organization. You'll be able to interact with us via the chat panel on your screen and submit your questions, points, or share your comments throughout the session. We'll try and answer all your questions during the presentation, as well as at the end during the Q&A session. The Q&A session is supported by Stella Sterling, Tillmann's co-lead partner for the Pfizer Disability Chapter Europe, and Alvin Tremolet, Pfizer Inclusion Lead Europe. The opportunity is available to reach out to Tillmann or myself for further questions after the webinar. I'd like to point out that the webinar is recorded and will be available online afterwards. Please feel free to share the webinar with your colleagues and your friends. I will now hand over to Tillmann Henssler.
Thank you, Martha. Good afternoon and welcome. I realize that the Open University is a global university, so it's good morning to all of you joining us from America. And I appreciate very much that you set your alarm clock very early to be able to join us. I think it's 7:30 your time in the morning, so thank you very much. And also, yes, maybe good evening to all those colleagues joining us from the other end of the world, so to speak. So my name is Tillmann Henssler. About my background, I'm the sourcing manager for Pfizer, which is a biopharmaceutical company discovering, developing, and providing medicines, vaccines, and consumer healthcare products. I've been very passionate about raising awareness and helping to reduce unconscious bias towards persons with disabilities. I've held the honorary office of Disability Council in Germany for Pfizer for 16 years. This includes the Workplace Management Integration Program, which is helping colleagues to return to work after a long-term illness or accident. I'm co-lead for the Disability Chapter Europe and also a member of the Pfizer Global Disability Leadership Team. So one of the roles is supporting and facilitating the exchange between the disability colleague resource groups in the markets and to promote best practices and initiatives within the organization. I'm keeping this presentation very general for the benefit of all the participants, taking into account that your personal and professional backgrounds are very diverse. So my intention is to make the next half hour worth your time and interesting, whether you're working for a large firm, a small firm, a not-for-profit organization, or you're just interested in the topic. So I've made the presentation into 4 sections. I'll give you a brief introduction to diversity and inclusion at the workplace with a focus on disability. Then I'll be talking about some of the potential challenges for people with disabilities at their workplace, about creating a more inclusive environment, and finally, I'll give you some practical examples and ideas what you could do for taking first steps to support colleagues with disabilities in your organization. To make this session more interactive for all of us, as Martha pointed out, I would sincerely like to encourage you all to submit your questions, points, and share your comments throughout the session via the chat panel on your screen. Martha will then be able to share them with us by reading them out, and Stella, Alvin, and myself will try and answer your questions. So in this first section, I would like to briefly define diversity and inclusion, why it's a priority in the workplace, and talk about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and some examples, general examples about supporting inclusion of people with disabilities at the workplace. For diversity, there are different definitions. So one example is having diversity means understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing our individual differences. These can be along the dimensions of race, gender, sexual orientation, age, physical abilities, or religious beliefs. Inclusion is the achievement of a work environment in which all individuals are treated fairly and respectfully and have equal access to opportunities and resources and contribute fully to the organization's success. Essentially, inclusion is what you do, welcoming diversity and creating an environment where all kinds of different people can thrive and succeed. It combines various aspects such as beliefs that people are different, they have the same essential worthiness, and you have to take action to include different people in the organization. Why it's a priority? Inclusion is one of the cornerstones of any company culture. Knowing to create inclusive teams is an essential component to business success for the future. The employees should mirror society. It leads to a better understanding of the customers. When you invite colleagues with diverse backgrounds to collaborate and actively involve them in the conversation, you blend your individual experiences to more easily overcome challenges, achieve business goals, and create more innovative products and services. And finally, people look for employers that have strong ethics, inclusive cultures, and fulfilling collegial place to work. So it's about recruiting great people. The United Nations Conventions on the Rights for the People with Disabilities is actually a legislation, a treaty, which has been rolled out or signed by many different markets around the world. It's supporting the inclusion of people with disabilities. The parties of the convention are required to promote, protect, and ensure the full enjoyment of human rights by persons with disabilities and ensure that they enjoy full equality under the law. The convention has served as a major catalyst in the global movement for viewing persons with disabilities as objects of charity, medical treatment, and social protection towards viewing them as full and equal members of society with human rights. The treaty came into force in May 2008 and has been signed by many markets around the world. So core provisions include examples of reasonable accommodation, prevention of discrimination, accessibility, right to education, and participation. Many markets have some form of legislation, employment laws concerning people with disabilities at the workplace. So one of the few common ones are, for example, that they include clauses about employers maintaining a workplace that provides reasonable access for its employees with disabilities. Also requirements concerning accommodation, like technical aids or training at the workplace. And another one is data privacy. Of course, employees' medical history or condition must be kept confidential. The exception is that if you need, if the illness or the disability has an effect on your work, then of course you need to inform the employer of the medical condition so that he can make proper arrangements in cases of, for example, of an emergency.
That's right. And Tillmann, as you've mentioned, it differs between different countries. And actually, the UK has ratified the UN Treaty, but has also enacted the Equality Act 2010, which sets out a number of protected characteristics, including disabilities. The legislation creates a duty to eliminate discrimination, harassment, and victimization, and to advance equality of opportunity. In essence, it facilitates consistency in what employers and employees need to do to make their workplace a fair environment and compliant with the law. I know we have a lot of people from all over the world joining us. It would certainly be interesting to hear the different legislations that other countries have in place on the subject, so please feel free to message us in the chat. Back over to you, Tillmann, now.
Yes. So creating a more inclusive environment. In this section, I would like to talk briefly about creating a more inclusive environment. An inclusive environment is one where we welcome and value our differences and create an environment where every person can flourish and teams are more innovative and effective because of their differences. Inclusive behavior helps create better connections between colleagues from diverse backgrounds, so that your organization has a positive impact on the working environment of colleagues with a disability. Examples for you to consider to think more inclusively are: explore your unconscious biases towards colleagues with disabilities. When are you most likely to act on your biases, and how can you reduce them? And also a view to recognizing informal networks around you. How can they be unwittingly exclusive? And what can you do to change that, to make it more inclusive? For people, it means different things at work. Different life experiences and perspectives are welcomed to get better decisions. Colleagues feel they're listened to. They're given different ways to contribute, and respected when they challenge established thinking. There are also benefits of an inclusive environment. It's a more effective workforce, as different thinking styles will be taken into account. It's the acceptance of people's differences, a good, attractive environment to work in, and more innovative and creativity due to a difference of thoughts and more voices contributing. And on an emotional level, feeling more valued, fulfilled and satisfied, more connected to colleagues and the organization, and a place for everybody to feel welcomed. A sense of belonging as the organization represents society.
Sorry, I think we may be having some technical difficulties. Tillmann, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Yep.
Perfect. So we have a poll for you that would actually like to ask some of our attendees. There are a number of challenges that Tillmann has already highlighted in particular. So we would like to pose the question of what do you think the biggest challenges are facing people with disabilities in the workplace? So the poll should be with you now, so please feel free to put your suggestions forward. We'll just give you a bit of time to just submit all your answers. Tillmann, I know you've pointed out a number of challenges that people with disability already encounter. And I think although an organization can really do quite a bit to implement programs and frameworks to support people with disabilities in alignment with the law, I know an unconscious bias can often be difficult to overcome and often requires a cultural change. But I'd like to also pose the same question to you. In your opinion, what would you say what would you say the biggest challenges are that people with disabilities encounter in the workplace?
Yes, I think you need to potential challenges for disabled people in the workplace. It's basically, I think we can distinguish between visible disabilities and invisible disabilities. If an employee has a visual impairment, for example, then it's important for you as a colleague to identify yourself and anyone else with you. Obviously, clear paths, obstacles, and describe the surroundings to advise the person of their environment. If appropriate, offer them to read written information and plan ahead to allow adequate time to prepare printed materials in alternative formats, just a large print, audio cassette, digital format, or braille. For employees with physical disabilities, walking with the support of a stick, a walker, or wheelchair, it's important to know your workspace, to be aware of what is accessible and not accessible to people who use mobility aids. Also keep an eye on rearranging the furniture or objects in a room to accommodate wheelchairs or other mobility aids. If you need to have a lengthy conversation with someone in a wheelchair, consider sitting so that you can make eye contact, and give directions that include distance and physical obstacles. And another example is if an employee is deaf or has a hearing impairment, you need to attract the individual's attention before speaking, Another good advice is to face the person to facilitate lip reading. Keep hands and other objects away from your lips when speaking. Speak clearly and slowly and directly to the person and not to the interpreter. And reduce or eliminate disruptive background noises, since amplification devices are very sensitive to ambient noise. Converse in a quiet environment or move to one in order to facilitate communication. Of course, there are some other challenges too, like the unconscious bias and their work environment perhaps, that there is still a widespread belief that persons with disabilities have lower performance and are ill more often, which is not true. And of course, the challenge is that you always, especially when it's an invisible disability, you need to raise awareness for your impairment and the restrictions, because people or your colleagues just tend to forget. And also making adjustments either with technical aids or depending on organization internal guidelines, you maybe have the opportunity to offer flexibility of the job to work maybe from home sometimes, or adjust the hours and tasks. Martha?
Sorry about that. Thank you for that, Tillmann. I think we'll bring the poll to a close now, and we'll look at some of our results. We do have a few questions. There is one from Emily Watton, and the question is the assumption of being more of a hindrance than a help. Are we worth the effort? Have we proven ourselves? She has highlighted that as one of the challenges that people with disabilities may encounter. What are your thoughts on that?
Could you just repeat the question? I didn't quite catch.
Well, Emily Watton has has provided some commentary in terms of the challenges that people with disabilities encounter in the workplace. So her comment has been, there is a general assumption of being more of a hindrance than a help, raising the question of are we worth the effort, or have we proven ourselves to be worth the effort? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to raise awareness for different types of disabilities and the restrictions. I mean, people with disabilities, they have certain restrictions, but they can really fully use their talent if they're given the opportunity or they have the right accommodation at their workplace. It's something where it's worth raising awareness to, and try and reduce the unconscious bias towards it.
Definitely. And Richard Gard has actually highlighted something that's very interesting as well. In a small office environment, a single unisex toilet is being installed for all ability groups. Are there any regulations governing the height or design of the wash basin? If not, might there be a legal objection to the installation of a standard height sink? And actually, I think perhaps that's the direction we'll be heading towards now, isn't it, in terms of being a bit more inclusive in all areas, and almost it being a default stance of being inclusive.
Yes, I think it's a very specific question to a specific market. So I think every market has varying legislation. So it's probably difficult to ask, but it's probably worth to find out in your market what the legislation is. But certainly in some markets there are some specific requirements concerning the height of wash basins and that.
Thank you, Tillmann. So just in the interest of time, we'll move on to the next slide.
Yes, thank you. So in my introduction, I mentioned some activities that support in my role for the disability community. So I think if you haven't already got a group engaging for the disability community, then you might consider forming a colleague resource group. Your background or motivation to form this group Maybe that you have a disability yourself, or you may be a caregiver and have experience caring for a family member, or you may just be interested in the topic. So a colleague resource group, the intent is that they address unique issues of the various groups of disabilities, visible and invisible, and looking at issues concerning the group as a whole or maybe individuals. Another advantage about the colleague resource group, it offers employees an opportunity to network and share experiences and best practices. So you come together at a regular basis at your site or maybe per WebEx to discuss various topics concerning disability. It gives you an opportunity to raise awareness for the different types of disabilities and the restrictions. And you're also an advocate for disability rights, to raise awareness, to reduce barriers at the workplace for different types of disability. Also, colleague resource groups tend to engage in activities like one very interesting one coming up is the International Disability Day on December 3rd. They provide disability awareness workshops, like experiencing disability firsthand. Some groups will hire a wheelchair or guide dog just to give colleagues the experience to feel what it's like walking in the shoes of the disabled person. And of course, you provide information. You create a flyer or you inform people to make awareness for your CRG and types of disability. And perhaps you can even use your organization's intranet page, if they have one, to publicize your events. And finally, it's also a forum for people who are seeking advice. So oftentimes people want to know where can I apply for a disability pass, or how can I locate a support group for my disability in the local community. So that's a good forum to provide advice.
There's certainly a number of ways that organizations can really provide support for people with disabilities. It would be definitely interesting to hear what the audience would have to say in terms of how each of their workplaces supports colleagues with disabilities. So I think I'll open up the poll again. This time the question is, how does your workplace support colleagues with disabilities? So again, it's available to everyone, so please do provide some answers. We're very interested to hear what you have to say in that particular respect.
Okay, then I will move on to the next slide. Another example of a project supporting colleagues with disabilities. So one fact is that 1/3 of all sickness days are related to employees who have a long-term sickness. The longer the person is away from work, the harder it is to reintegrate into the workplace. Often this may be related to a disability as a result of an illness or accident, or the colleague may not even be aware of the disability. So the example I would like to give is the Workplace Integration Management Program. It's something we have in Germany. It's a legal requirement in Germany even, and it's for all employees who are more than 6 weeks off sick within the last 12 months. The employer is obliged to actually ask or see if he can help support the reintegration process. But it's voluntary for the employee to participate, and the employee is included in all steps of the process. The team itself are members from HR, the Works Council and Disability Council, and depending on the case, for the internal departments such as EHS and Occupational Health, and externally maybe the Integration Agency may be involved. And the basis is that there's an internal company agreement in place describing the process, including reference to adhering to data protection policies. The main benefit is actually that the colleague who's been off long sick, he's obviously worrying about returning to work because of changes in the workplace, the role, the environment, new system, colleagues, manager, all these changes going on. He may be struggling with his health or have financial worries, and of course the longer he's away, he has loss of self-confidence. And for the employer, the advantage is that, of course, he improves his image as a caring employer for his workplace, and longer absences due to illness can be significantly shortened, and it leads to higher motivation for the employee. So this is a very specific example from Germany. So this may or not be an opportunity for you to implement in your market. But maybe something to introduce something similar on a purely voluntary basis, with the support by engaged colleagues in alignment with their internal policies. And I would advise you to check with your local legislations especially on the questions of data privacy. But this may be an opportunity for you.
Thank you, Tillmann. And actually, here at the Open University, we also have a number of schemes in place to support both colleagues with disabilities, but as well as colleagues who have been off sick for a while. So we have occupational health, which supports colleagues with disabilities and those who have long-term illnesses. But we also have two other schemes, the Employee Assistance Program and a Wellbeing Plus program, which benefits all staff within the university with a focus on health, life and work. And we've had somebody in the chat actually mention one of the programs that Cambridge University offers. So Cambridge University Press offers flexi time, opportunity to work from home. And Emily Watson again says a person is dedicated to making the workplace accessible and the budget made available to adjustments. And I think that's a very key part in terms of having a budget being made available so that support can be provided to colleagues with disabilities. I'll also just read out another one from Andrea. She says, in the UK, we have a program called Access to Work, who can offer support and funding for adjustments, which is fantastic. So please do keep the comments coming. They're very, very interesting. Let's keep the conversation going. Tillmann, I'll just hand back to you for the summary slide, I guess.
Yes, we're nearly coming to the close of our lunchtime webinar. So just a brief summary. I hope you've learned something new and found the presentation worthwhile. But the summary here, I hope you learned something about the importance of diversity and inclusion at the workplace. You've considered the potential challenges for people with disabilities at their workplace and maybe help to contribute to a more inclusive environment. And some practical tips to support colleagues with disabilities in your organization. I think some of you may be already well engaged, but do try and take some first steps to implement some of the ideas.
Hello, Tillmann, are you there?
Yep.
Perfect. Sorry, I think I just lost you for a minute there.
Okay.
So thank you so much, everybody. So we've now come to a time where we can answer further questions from the audience. As mentioned before, the Q&A session will be supported by Stella Sterling, Tillmann's co-lead partner for the Pfizer Disability Chapter Europe, and Alvin Tremollet, Pfizer Inclusion Lead Europe. Both will be able to add to responses in the chat. Unfortunately, we actually don't have a lot of time for questions left, but I will bring to you a question, Tillmann, that has been put forward by, I think, Richard Gard. And the question is, do you work with other companies to share processes on inclusion?
It's a very good idea. We don't actually work with specific companies. We have forums here in Berlin, for example, where companies come together and exchange best practices. But it's a very good idea.
Great, thank you. And Andrea Lenson has also just kindly put forward the the government website for the program she mentioned, Access to Work. So again, we'll share that with others. So please feel free to be able to explore that website. And so I will just bring the webinar to a close. Thank you very much, Tillmann, for an interesting and insightful session. And thank you to all who have joined us. I do hope you've enjoyed this webinar. And remember, it will be available on demand, but also just remember to check our website for future events and webinars. Thank you so much.
Thank you.